Each year, Microsoft Research hosts hundreds of influential speakers from around the world, including leading scientists, renowned experts in technology, book authors, and leading academics, and makes videos of these lectures freely available.
Okay, we're going to start with our session on Project Dallas. I have Christian Liensberger's short bio up here. He is a program manager at Microsoft. He's been involved in the Dallas team since the early stage. He was actually also one of our student partners in Vienna. Is that correct?
Yes.
Yes, so we're very pleased to have him here for a tutorial on Project Dallas. Let's welcome Christian.
Hi. So this sessions are going to be all about Project Dallas, which is a new service that's part of the Azure platform. And interestingly enough, it's also built on top of the Azure platform. I'm going to go into more details in this session. But first, my name is Christian Liensberger, as mentioned. I'm program manager, and I used to study at the University of Technology in Vienna. And I've joined Microsoft 3/4 of a year ago. And have been on this project since the early days, and we are actually one of the early adopters of Azure. So we ran through lots of issues when we actually started with, because Azure wasn't mature enough. And now we actually have a lot of patterns that we use to do work with Azure and stuff like that. And we want to actually enrich Azure with new services and information as a service. So the idea is to have services and expose them to people. Let's imagine, what is Dallas? So Dallas does try to solve one of a really basic question, which is I need data, and I need data to build an application, to do something with existing data that I have, to join data. I just need some data to do interesting scenarios. Question now is how do I get to this data? Without Dallas right now, there's a lot of issues. One is the data comes in a lot of different formats. There's a lot of data out there that's available, but the data is all in different formats, and it's pretty hard to actually get the data into your application or use the Dallas with the existing data that you might have. One of the examples is data.gov, which is an open, which is the government data from the United States, and it's open to everybody. But the problem is the data comes in CSV files, as PDF files, as Excel files, as text files, as database dumps, as XML files. Question is now, how could I use this data? There's a lot of work that I need to do before I can actually use this data. Another thing is also, if I want to buy data, there's a lot of different billings relationships that I have to create, right? I have to set a billing relationship with account provider A, B, C. They have different prices. There's no bill, no centralized bill. I have to use a credit card. I have to invoice. There's different ways of, it's pretty hard to actually start the relationship at this point too. Another thing is also there's different ways of accessing the data. So some content providers give you data on an FTP share. Others have actually somebody fly over with the DVD. Others give you a database. Some others have web services. And with the web services, the problem is all of these web services are different. Lots of content providers we saw do REST-based approaches. Some do SOAP-based approaches. But then each of them is again different. You need to learn a lot. It's actually a pretty steep curve to get into this data and to use the data. The other problem with this is also that if you take FTP or DVDs or something or a database dump, I can do a lot of stuff with a database dump. I can query, I can aggregate, I can do a lot of different scenarios. If I take a web service, my possibilities are limited, right? I can only do what the content provider thought I will do. There's no way for me to actually say, for a lot of web services at least, to say I want to do an aggregation over this data. I can do it, but I have to get the data down, and then I can do it, but it's nothing that's coming out of the box. The next problem is, how do I actually get to this data? How do I discover the data? Right now, for example, there's some portals out there like data.gov or data.gov.uk tries also to do something similar. But how do I really get to this? There's a lot of silos that are not connected, so there's no way to get from one to the next. And it's really hard to actually find the data. And the next thing is also, a lot of this data is a dump of strings or numbers. And there's no additional metadata associated with it. So it's pretty hard to reason on top of this data. you have to have like a lot of domain knowledge to actually get into the data and to use the data. And one thing that would help here a lot are some kind of semantics. I'll move on. And I mean, as it shows here, this is more like a wall between me and the data, right? On the right side, that would be like the data providers who have like great data. I'm on the left, and I can't it's pretty hard to get from one side to the other. So how can Dallas help here? Dallas is actually it's a set of services that that allow you to access the data through like a standard access protocol. It's called OData, and I'm going to go into the details of that a little bit later. Dallas is also a marketplace, so it's one stop. You go there, you get rich search capabilities, you get like categories, descriptions, you get previews, stuff like that help you actually discover data and find out if the data is suitable for you before you actually buy the data or use the data. Additional to that, there's with Dallas comes one bill, so I have to pay. I have only one bill at the end of the month, and I don't need to maintain these different relationships with different content providers. Another thing is also I have one place where I manage my account. So I can subscribe to a set of data sets, and I can maintain a lot of API keys and different ways of accessing the data, but it's all within one portal and one experience. I don't have to go to learn different experiences and stuff. And on the other hand, if you're a content provider, from the side of the content providers, there's like a unified way of getting data into Dallas. So you don't have to also like explore different ways, and you don't have to build the web services on your own, or you don't have to do a lot of work to get into Dallas. So for who is Dallas? Like, what does it? Who would be interested in Dallas, right? I said there's like this piece that allows somebody who is who is a user of the Dallas to discover the data. So I, as for example, a developer, could go there and discover the data and power any of the applications that I want to build. Another thing is also I, as a partner for Dallas, a content provider, if I have rich data, I have a one-stop place to get to the data and actually to get the data out through the Microsoft channels to information workers and to developers. So I don't have to build all this ecosystem around my data, but Microsoft is going to build that ecosystem for me. So there's a lot of benefits coming with that. And another thing is also, for me as an information worker, or knowledge worker, I can go and have a single click or a really simple experience to get the data into my data center or into my Excel spreadsheet or my database and join it there with my data and do rich augmentation on top of the data and also discover and buy the data. So let's do two demos that shows the same data set. It is always the crime data set from data.gov, but in two different ways. Go out here. The first demo that I'm going to show is actually a partner from us who built like a map visualization on top of the data. So they built the. Oops, sorry. You can't see it. I can see it. So let's zoom out a little bit. It's getting hard. So the idea what they have is actually they use the Bing map control, the new Silverlight control, and on top of that they built like a little menu that allows you to visualize data. So I could go in here and say like I want to see robbery in Alabama. What it does is it goes out to Dallas, does some additional processing on top of it, and creates like a heat map that shows me like the hotspots of robbery in Alabama. The interesting thing here is like we spoke with the partner and asked him how much work it was actually to implement all of this. And they said like since all of your data sets come in the same format, and we only had to learn one feed because they use multiple feeds from us here, and we could like create this heat map pretty easily, and it was like a few days of work, and they were done with the whole experience and everything. The other thing, actually this is, let's get, that's pretty bad. Let's make this a little bit smaller. The other thing is the crime stats application. This is an application that got built by one of our program managers like over the weekend in a few hours. what he did is actually he took the same data.gov crime data and showed it in Facebook. So he uses the social graph that comes with Facebook and joins that with the crime data. And what you can see here is actually who of my friends is in most danger, right? Who is going to be murdered most likely? And the interesting thing is that the guy in Atlanta is actually living in the worst place. It's pretty interesting. And I mean, this is just one example how you could use the data in Dallas to actually augment like existing data scenarios or existing graphs that you have, like social graphs. Or you could build a completely new experience out of the box with using some of the components that you know and visualize the data on top of that. Let's get back here. Actually, we jump right back into the next demo, which is the NASA crater counter. We also have in our data store right now, we have all the Mars imagery. So we have all the images that the rover Spirit and Opportunity took on Mars. Plus, we also have the images that the probe that's surrounding Mars takes from the surface. And NASA thought we could build a nice experience on top of that and have people actually count the craters for us on Mars. So they built like this little application that allows people to go in and actually, let's go back here. Where's my mouse? And be a Martian, right? So they call it be a Martian, which is kind of like interesting. Wait, so you have to go back. So what you can do here is you go down here, and you have this map room. You go in there, and little Silverlight application is loaded. Allows you to start mapping. What you do is I count craters, and I get data from Dallas. Where it starts. That's the best tile ever. So there's no craters on here. Let's go to the next one. And what I can do now here is actually I take one of the craters and I mark them, and they take this information and then use it to actually create a map out on Mars. This is also an interesting scenario, and they had also people signing up for this, and there were lots of people doing it. And this helps. This would be one scenario where you said I could crowdsource my data, right? I have this data, and there's a lot of work to process the data or to categorize the data, and how could I actually get it to Dallas to the people? So I built a nice experience on top of that. How could they help me working with the data? And the interesting thing here is when you publish the data in the marketplace, people could actually start and build their own experience on top of it. So you get even more. People could use the data in another way too to enrich the data and show and send us the feedback back to you, help you analyze the data. So how can Dallas help me? Here I have the two audiences that actually consume the data. So what Dallas allows is, actually one important point before I go into this, is Dallas, a lot of data that's on Dallas is also free. So we have commercial data up there and free data, like the data.gov data is free. We have also all the data from the United Nations, all the statistics data that I have, which is also free and it's going to stay free. The NASA data is going to stay free. So in addition to the trial subscription that I said here, there's also a way of getting access to free data. But if there's commercial data, I could also go in there and use the commercial data. I have the way of trial subscriptions to actually try the data before I use the data, before I buy the data. The models that it comes with is a pretty simple subscription-based or transaction-based model. So transaction-based model, you could see a prepaid model where I buy a bundle of transactions and start playing with the data. And if I see, okay, I need the data more often, I can go into this subscription mode where I get an all-you-can-eat subscription for data set or bundle of data set. As a developer, I get also this consistent OData experience, which is a REST-based API across all data sets. And the interesting thing here is it works on it works on a lot of platforms also outside of the Microsoft ecosystem, because it's an open standard. Another benefit that I get is since all the data comes in the same format, we also built some kind of visualizations on top of the data, so you can start experimenting and playing with the data before actually downloading, or before buying the data and then downloading the data and working with the data. There's like an in-browser experience for you to start playing with the data. Right now, we also provide C# proxy classes that allow you, if you have a C# experience, if you're working in C#, you get like more advanced classes to work with the data. As an information worker, right now out of the box comes an integration with Power Pivot, which is an in-memory to BI tool that ships with Excel, and it allows you to get the data into Dallas, build pivot tables on top of into Excel, and build pivot tables on top of the data that you get downloaded, or join it also with like data that you have in Excel already or in. As an information worker said, it's a pretty simple and predictable license model, and coming soon is also the ability to join and get the data into SQL Server. So if you have existing SQL Server instances, you can get the data down and use it within your SQL Server databases. Also within SQL Azure databases. So since we're part of the SQL Azure platform, you can have your data in SQL Azure. And since Dallas runs in the same data centers as SQL Azure, it is pretty fast and simple to get data then from Dallas into the SQL Azure databases. And additionally to that, we're also working to get Dallas into more Office assets. So you can see in the future, we'll see that Dallas surfaces in different Office applications like Access or Excel itself without Power Pivot. So now, to the marketplace. The marketplace right now is pretty simple, as you see in the screenshot here. But we are envisioning to have a marketplace that allows you also to have additional visualization and additional visualizations and tools to play with the data before actually downloading the data. And we envision also to have a large percentage of public domain data in our marketplace that allows you to use, which is all going to be free data, so you can use it without pay. And there's also going to be a lot of commercial data sets in the marketplace that allow you to, like, where the price is going to vary from a few fractions of a penny to like a few $1,000. But the idea is to have like a really, really broad set of data to cover everybody who is interested in using data. So what's the pricing models? The pricing models are, and after that I'm actually going to give you a demo of the marketplace and go a little bit more into the architecture. So what's the pricing here is, we have this subscription, which I started to mention, which means like it's a monthly term, it's unlimited usage of the data. It is auto-renewing, and it allows you also to take the data offline and use the data offline. So you could imagine that you download the data once, you use the data within your data centers or within your databases, and then whenever there's an update, you only synchronize the updates down. Transaction bundles is a second option, which is a pay-as-you-grow experience, where you say, like, I want to buy a set of I want to prepay some transactions, use the transactions, and then maybe also refill my transactions. But it's something where you say, like, I don't know how much data I'm going to use, so I want to start playing with the data a little bit. And then maybe you could also go over and go into the subscriptions mode later if you see, okay, this is a data set that I'm really interested in using. The next one is free and trial, where trial means, in this scenario, that it is going to be a limited subset of the data. The content provider is able to specify what this limited subset is going to be, and it's going to be time unlimited, so you can use it as long as you want. Now let's go into the user portal demo. I'm going to show. So this here is our current experience. It is the catalog, and as you can see, we have like services here that are real-time services, like the AP service, which is real-time news. We have stuff from the city of Miami is coming soon. We have also financial data. We have data.gov data. Right now, it's pretty like we only have one offering, but this marketplace is a CTP marketplace, so it's a beta marketplace, so we are still working with content providers to get more data in, and we have actually a lot of content providers who are interested. We have UPC data. We have a lot of data from Infogroup, which is information about businesses, about points of interest and stuff like that. Then we also have the NASA data sets and National Geographics, which is these are tiles that allow you, like map visualizations, tiles like And we have also lots of data from NAVTAG, which is a lot. And they have also points of interest. They have like parking, they have weather data, they have different interesting data sets. We have data, demographics data, and all the UN data sets. As you can see, there's like all these demographic statistics and all statistic data that the UN has right now. Additional to that, we have like another interesting real-time feed, which is Weather Central. It's really interesting because they have like all the data about clouds and temperatures for all the board, and it's pretty simple to visualize on a map. And we had also a demo build where it would show like the whole data on the Bing Maps controller. You could zoom around pretty nicely. And so this is like the experience right now. If you go to the marketplace and you could actually say, okay, I'm interested in one of these data sets, and you click the subscribe button, that takes you to a form, a website where you have to accept the EULA that is specified by the content provider. Where did the mouse go? Okay, and click the subscribe button. From here, then I see like my list of data sets that I'm subscribed to, and I could actually also start and dive into the data sets from here, which I'm going to show a little bit later. Additional to that, I can also manage my account keys, which is something, you can see it as an API key. Each time you query the service, you send this account key in the authentication header, and we actually validate the account key and see if you subscribe to the data set and grant you access or deny access depending on that. Additional to that, and you can see that there's like multiple account keys. So what you could do is like for different applications, you create different account keys. You can track then applications individually, which takes us to the access report, where in the access report, I see all of my activities within the last 30 days. And I see also which account keys accessed the data sets. And in this case, I always use the default account key, but you could imagine like using different account keys and see like how many accesses you had per account key. Okay. So let's go a little bit into the architecture now of the whole of Dallas. And we are part of the Azure platform, and this slide shows us as one of the pillars of the Azure platform, but more likely we are part of the Azure platform and we built on top of the Azure platform. So I don't know if it is interesting to see it on the side, but it could also be on the top of the whole thing, which means we are going to be in all the data centers that Azure is right now, and we also have a deep partnership with all of the Azure assets. So we also help driving requirements for these and to make sure Dallas works great with all of the Azure components. In the architecture slide, and what we do right now is we have a set of web roles that we use in Azure, and these roles host the APIs, and they host the portal that you saw right now. And in front of that, we use a load balancer that makes sure that if you as a consumer come in, you actually load balance between these web roles to make sure you get like the best experience and the fastest results, and you don't have to wait a long time. Additional to that, we are able to consume as data sets right now data that comes from Windows Azure tables, that comes from the Windows Azure Blob Store. So you could host, if you have like image data or PDFs or like any blob data, you could host that in the Windows Azure Blob Store, and we could actually service it out. Additional to that, we are also able to access databases that sit in SQL Azure. So the experience right now is pretty simple. You give us a connection string, and we are able to connect with the database and expose the data. We are also able to connect to third-party clouds, like third-party web services and databases. The AP data service that I showed before in the marketplace is actually not hosted in Azure, and we're proxying their web service to ours, and we are able to provide a unified experience on top of that. Additional to that, we make sure we have everything in place to do authentication, security, logging, and have also an account database. We made sure we partition the account database, so because we saw that in SQL Azure, if there's multiple people accessing, they have built in some experience to make sure you can take down one of their servers, so they do some throttling in there. So we split up the account and we partitioned the account database to make sure we deliver the right performance for the users. And we also have like monitoring and operations tools inside of Azure running that we can actually monitor our services and are sure the services are up and running. And this enables then via SSL and REST-based OData, the consumers are then able to use that and go through that into our APIs and consume the data. Interesting thing here is also that with the web roles, we built in a framework that allows us to scale up and down depending on how much traffic we see. So we do some forecasting to understand like how many people are going to access our services, stuff like that. We also built in a lot of caching to make sure we reach the scalability, and we're actually able to make sure if there are issues with, for example, third-party web services or databases or even with other Azure assets, we still can serve data for a certain time. So what's OData now? Dallas API is built all on OData, and it is an open data protocol. The idea for data is to expose web services, expose data as web services to the web. And the OData protocol got released under the Microsoft Open Specification promise, which means like you can use it, you can build clients on top of that, you can build open source clients on top of that. It is a REST-based query language, and it provides functionality that's similar to SQL. So they have like features in it for filtering, for sorting, for aggregation, for joins, for all that kind of stuff, but it's all REST-based, which is pretty, and it's also pretty simple to explore and use. The results that are returned are Atom feeds, and it is a little bit an augmented Atom. So the content section of the Atom feeds contains one record, so there's like multiple entries, and each one contains one record that's served back. It's pretty nice because it still works with a lot of the Atom readers out of the box, and these are only extensions to the Atom feed. So it's also pretty simple to parse and to build an own client library on top of that. Client libraries exist right now for .NET, for PHP, Java, and Objective-C as an iPhone. And there's also built-in support for Visual Studio. Right now what you can do is you go to in Visual Studio, you add a service reference, picks it up, and it creates a service model for you. And with that comes also link support. So you can actually, if you take a Dallas feed, you can write the link query against the Dallas feed and do joins and interesting things on top of that. Pretty nice. Right now, the only thing, we have some services exposed right now with the flexible OData queries. Most of the services we have exposed are still fixed functions. We are working on getting everything over into the flexible queries, and we are actually really close to be there. So what we have right now is the payload is OData. So all the clients that consume OData, like Power Pivot consumes OData, are able to consume our data. And for executing the services right now, it's a simple fixed function pipeline, and we actually provide C# classes that allow you to access it, and we also provide the REST query, so you can copy and paste the REST query and create a web request and execute the web request, and you get stuff back. So as next step, I want to show a little bit more about consuming Dallas. So let's get over here, and let's go into one of the data sets. Let's take subscriptions. Let's take the data.gov data set, which is really nice to look at. Make this a little bit smaller again. Good. And what you see here is like this is our Service Explorer experience. Out of the box, for each of the data sets, we create this experience where on the left-hand side you have the parameters that you can use with the service, and on the right-hand side you get like the results when you execute a sample query. So what I can do is here is I take the state of Alabama, scroll down a bit, and click the preview button. What the preview button does is actually it's going in and it's loading all the data for all the crime data from Alabama. It is shown in a nice table view, so it allows you to explore the data pretty simple, pretty easily. And additional to that, you could also switch over to the Atom view, which shows you the OData feed. And as seen here, this is like the augmented atom pub that contains entries for each of the rows, and then for each of the columns, for each of the values, like in the properties, they have like this notion of the properties as XML, again, like property back. Additional to that, you could like specify other parameters here, and it's coming up with all of this logic built in, so I can change state, and I get like the cities inside of that state and stuff like that. Additional to that, I get down here, I get the link, actually the URL for the query that I executed right now, and I can copy that URL and use it in any clients and use it against the data. But if I have a C# application, I could click here and download the C# proxy classes. So I quickly download them. Dialog comes up on the other screen. And once I've downloaded it, I could open Visual Studio. Take it over. Oh, man. Smaller. And I have it like, in this example, I have these service proxy classes already in my application, and I wrote a really small application, a really small program. The only thing it does is it creates a new instance of this downloaded service class, and it gives it the account key, which is the password. I mean, it's like the password that you send to the service. And then I invoke the service with the parameters I want, and these are the exact same parameters that got exposed to the Service Explorer. And it comes also like with, if I don't know what to use, I get the description and I get also sample values, so I could start exploring the data also inside of C#. And from here then I invoke that and get the results back and print them to the output. And if I start this and drag it over, you see like a pretty simple example where you get the values back, and it's like 2 lines of code, I mean, to interact with the service, and then showing the values is like another like 5 lines or something like that. So it's pretty simple to get the data inside of your application, to use it. And I mean, you can imagine that once you have the data down, you can do like a lot of different things with it, right? Join it and so another button that you see here is the Analyze button. And for that, I actually have to remote really quickly into my box, my dev box, because now it's pretty bad. Actually, why is this off? Sorry for that. Seems like the resolution is so high that it can't take it, so I will just try to get it down a little bit on the other screen. 1 second. I got it down now. So, yeah, now I've got a problem. Seems like that. Now, if I. Oh. What's up with this projector here? So, sorry about that. Seems like we have some issues with this projection here. And if I click this Analyze button here, what happens actually is like it's going to download a service document which contains the query that I executed, and it opens this in Power Pivot in Excel. So let's add it to this book, and it opens the Power Pivot and it downloads the data. And I have already downloaded the data. We can go through it, but it's like a few clicks to just go through it, and it will download the data and then show me the data inside of Power Pivot. And from here on, I can start working with it in Excel. It has all the built-in features, so I could start and build, a pivot table, and then, so like I create this pivot table here. Takes a little while, but I could then take like the state, and let's take violent crime. What I get here is like a pivot on this state and the violent crime. So I could start like working with this. I could start creating charts on top of it, use it with your own data and stuff like that. So this is like a first integration point with the Office assets, and you will see a lot more in the future coming. And okay, let's go back. Presentation. So there's two different consumption scenarios that I think are pretty important. One is like I create an application that really knows about my data, knows about the data. So I built like a tailored application that uses the data in some way and has an exact notion about the data. But then there is also this other kind of applications that you could build that allow you to, you as an end user, you control the subscriptions and you control the relationship with Dallas, but you use this application to visualize the data, and you have existing data sets and you want to like join them. So you could build an application that builds on top of that, like Power Pivot, for example, or you create a really, really scoped application that does the scenarios that you had in mind with Dallas. Another thing that helps these generic applications is semantic tagging. And what we have in mind right now is some semantic hints which allow you to specify, I have this column as a content provider. I can say I have column A, which name is AX or something, and I know it contains latitudes or longitudes, or it contains an address or something like that, and I could specify that. And as an application, as a third-party application consuming this data, I can use it to do some additional reasoning on top. It is not perfect, as it says here, like we don't solve the world hunger, but it allows it to, it's a starting point for an application. And we saw also that these kind of like basic hints help a lot of applications to make some guesses for the users, and the users could still do some additional, reasoning, say like, oh, you got this wrong or something, but it helps them already way into the process, and they're already like set up for, mostly set up. Then the other thing is also, which comes with this question, right? It's like, who's the Dallas account? Whose Dallas account is used? If I generate I can build an application where I, as an application builder, own the relationship with Dallas, and I say like, okay, you as user of this application, I take money from you, and I'm going to pay Dallas. Or I say like, I built this application, I want the consumer to actually own the relationship with Dallas. I would like also to give like another really interesting demo that was built on top of this semantics, which is, let's open this again. I don't know, could probably do a full screen. Be brave, yeah. And what this application is we used the new, this was actually built by one of our developers over like a few days, and he used the existing Bing Maps control, the new one that's a Silverlight control, and Bing Maps now allows also for third parties to add applications to Bing Maps. So you could say like, I have like this data, or I have this nice idea for an application, and you could build an application and it shows up in Bing Maps, and you can use the map control to actually put push pins and stuff on top of it, or put layers on top of it. And what our developer did is he built like a bridge to Dallas. So what I have already like pre-populated one of the data set, and what it does is actually it shows me an overlay of the census data, the census tracks, and it shows me for each of them the crime. So I could zoom in here, zoom in a little bit here, and say like, okay, I'm really interested in auto theft. So I see like there's 99 auto thefts here. I could also go in here and show the details for it. What I get here is the record for this exact census track stuff, and I could then also see, okay, this is really interesting, but I would also want to like add a new data set. So what I do is like I go in here, I give a name, let's call it something, test. And then what I could do is actually go over here, take the URL that I have here for Colorado, and go back, input the URL, specify which kind of visualization I want, and give it a color. Click on OK. What it should have done. Seems like my build is not working right now, but what the idea is here is that like once you zoom out here, it's actually interesting. once you zoom out here, what you would see is like all the push pins on top of it. And what it did is actually, since it knows the semantics, it actually knows which columns mean latitude and longitude, or which ones are city. And therefore, it can actually do some reasoning on top of that and take the city and the state and create, go to another service, get the latitude and longitude, and show it on a map. So the application does all of that. I'm sorry it's not showing it right now, but that's what it does. And this pre-populated one is exactly like what it uses also like the census tracts. They identify and says like, okay, there's a semantic hint on it that says like this field is the census tract ID. And therefore, I can show the related the data with it to on this census tract and show it in this popover that I showed. So now the question is like, what is in for content providers? I would imagine you guys have a lot of data that you might want to expose in some ways. And as a content provider, it is actually there's an easy publication and onboarding experience that allows you to actually onboard structured data. So if you have data in CSV files, you have data in a database, something like that, then you can onboard it. It also allows you to onboard blob data. As mentioned, you could have images. And what's not mentioned on the slide, it allows you also to onboard structured data that comes with blob data. So you could say like you have a row that's the metadata for a blob. So you could onboard both of it as one data set. And it's exposed as one data set to the end user. And but it's stored in two different locations. And additional to that, it allows you also to onboard existing web services. Right now, we are limited to REST-based web services, where you have to give us some kind of metadata document that describes your REST endpoint and what kind of results we are expected to get back, or an OData web service. So if you have a web service that's exposed as OData, which is also, I expect nobody has that right now, but it is pretty simple to do, and it's really simple on existing data sets to actually expose something as OData. It's also like 3 lines of code or something like that in Visual Studio. What comes with it is that the content is going to be it's going to be exposed to a global developer audience and information worker audience, which get this data in the future also to Microsoft assets like SQL Server. Right now they get it to the marketplace, but in the future you could see your data is showing up in existing Microsoft products, which would be really interesting. And it's going to all the Microsoft sales channels and everything. Additional to that, with the Microsoft Cloud computer platform, handles all of the storage, the delivery, the billing, so everything is built in. And it also does the reporting, so you get back also information about how many users used your data. You get also back information if people say something like, oh, if you added this column to it, or you allowed me to do queries on top of a column, then I would buy this data set. But since you're missing that, I can't, it's useless for me and stuff like that, which is really interesting. It's also going to be part, like as I said, it's an add service reference click in Visual Studio to use the data. So you also reach out to the whole developer community, Microsoft developer community, plus additional to that, since it's OData, you could also reach out to Java developers, to iPhone developers, to PHP developers. And so it's opening up the data to the world, mostly. The next thing what I want to give is actually how this would work as a publisher. How would you publish the data into Dallas? If you go back here, the experience that we have right now, let me take really quickly this connection string. The experience that we have right now is, this is the port right now, and it shows all the data sets that you have exposed. Right now I have only one data set exposed that I call test because I did some testing and see how easy it is to expose the data. And I could click add data set, and what I do now is I give a name to the data set, and I choose between one of these options. So I could say like, okay, a SQL Azure database, and please provision a database for me, or I have a web service, so please connect to this web service, or I have data in Windows Azure tables, so please, I give you the account that I created for you, please connect to that, or I have something in SQL Server, SQL Azure, or I said CSV or XML. And for this demo, I'm going to show the SQL Azure option. So what I do is I paste in the connection string here, and I click create. So what happens here in the background now is we are reaching out to the database. Oh man, this is like crazy. This is like work in progress, as you guys see. So what happened here is, this is a prototype, so we're working still on that, and we are also looking for feedback from people to understand what are the needs, and it's more like showing you what we actually want to build and what's coming in the future. And I have already prepared this data set, and what I can do once I imported this data set, I see the schema, and the schema shows me all the tables, it shows me all the columns, and I can tell, okay, from this database, I want to expose only like 3 tables out of the 5 that I have. And in each of these tables, I have these columns, and I can also put semantics hints to each of the columns. So if I go in here again, and let's just take this one that I imported previously, I could manage my expose schema. And here, what I do is if I go in and manage columns, I can do this semantic hint annotation. So I go in here, and I have these semantic hints. And this is also work in progress, so there's more stuff coming. It's going to be a rich experience here, but it allows you to do some basic, giving some basic hints about the data. Once I did that, go back to the data set. I can start adding an offering to the data set, which means what I do here is I give it the name. I have a logo, descriptions, and a namespace, which is the REST entry point. And I give it categories and stuff like that, so I can actually, I built here my marketplace experience so that users, when they want to buy, they actually get information about the data. I give also links to documentation, to samples and stuff like that. And then what's really interesting is like I can actually specify which ones of the columns that I have in my database I want to expose and which one people should be able to query on. This is really interesting because you might say, okay, I have this interesting data set, and this data set has 10 columns. But I create this offer which is free, and on the free offer I only allowed to query on like 3 of the columns. And if you buy the offer that costs $1, then you're allowed to query on more columns. And if you buy the more expensive, you are allowed to query on even more columns. So this is a really granular control of what you want to expose to the users and how they should be able to interact with the data. Additionally to that, you can specify the EULA, or you take the EULA that Microsoft provided to you. Here on this is where you actually specify the pricing. And as I said, there's like this transaction bundles, and there's the subscription model. And with the subscription, that's the all-you-can-eat model. And you give it a price here for this offering, which means like these columns that I specified are going to cost that much. If you want to go with the subscription, or if you want to buy transaction bundle, this is what it costs. And for Microsoft, it means you give specify $10. We are adding a little broker fee on top of that, which is going to be pretty low, to do cost recovery, cost coverage, and then you're ready to go. Additional to that, you can also specify some advanced options, which is more for content providers who don't want to open their data too broadly to the audience. But other than that, you click on save, and you could also say, I want to request publication. What happens then is Microsoft is going to has to approve this offering, because we have to check if the data that you expose is actually not illegal and you own the rights for exposing the data and stuff like that. So that's the only checks we do. And we actually committed to a really fast turnaround time, because it's not really convenient to wait a long time with exposing something. Once you did that, everything is ready to go, and it will show up in the marketplace, and people can start buying it and working with the data. Let's go back here. So what are the requirements for content providers? As a content provider, you need to have the rights to distribute the data. And you need to make it available for at least 12 months. This is important because as a user, I want to work with the data, and you can't take it online, offline. Online, it doesn't make much sense because there's people who try to build something on top of it. Additional to that, you must be able to handle query load. And here it's really interesting. If you get the data into Windows Azure, then the Azure platform takes a lot of work for you, and thus, since it scales, it allows you to it adds a significant value to as a content provider. You must also sign a contract that says like, okay, I have certain uptime and load balancing and stuff like that, which is also, if you have it in the Windows Azure platform, you get that it's all built in. For commercial content right now, we are aiming for the top 5 content content providers in the industry in your domain. And for the public domain content, actually, the only rights you need to have is to have the rights to distribute it openly to the channels, and you need also to be the source of the data. As mentioned already, there's a few ways of you can define the free trials. You control the data consumption by specifying which columns you can query on, which one you are returned. You specify also the price for transactions and subscriptions, and to define your terms, or you use yours. Ours. So that's really like where you want to go, and if you have like really tight needs or something like that. Microsoft is the merchant of record. So it means we are actually everybody who buys the data buys it to Microsoft, and the data is also served through Dallas. But we will apply a small percentage to cover our bandwidth and our billing surcharges. Additional to that, something that I didn't show in the onboarding experience is you get all this revenue dashboard. You are able to actually see how many people use your data. You are able to see how much Microsoft is going to pay you for the data. And the great thing is here, what you do is you actually aim for the broad audience out there. So, which is pretty interesting for a lot of people, because it's really hard to get out there and be known as like a data provider. So that's it from my side. There's a few things that you can do right now. It's actually Dallas is available as a CTP, as a community technology preview. That is also why there's not that many data sets in the marketplace right now. You can use it and you provide feedback. We're actually looking actively for feedback from the community. The portal is located at secretvisualservices.com, which is a little bit tricky to find. But there's also a website on microsoft.com/Dallas that points to the portal. As if you're interested to start a relationship as a content provider, we have this email address, which is dallasbd@microsoft.com. And we also have a blog. So we post in the blog, we have tutorials about how to use Dallas with Silverlight. And it has all the updates about what's coming and what we published recently, and also some introductional guidelines and stuff like that. So that's it. And if there are questions, I'm open for questions now.
All right. Is this Dallas suitable for as a node in the distributed system, so that it's not used via web user interfaces, but some service provider pushes data to Dallas, and then clients get the data with their system, so that
right now we expose all the data to the web services, so you have to build like a client that accesses the web services. But once you did that, then you can actually use it in your own. You have to get it down somehow through the services, and then you can use it within any application. Yes?
A couple questions, if you will.
Yeah.
First of all, have you currently offer format output in AtomPub and JSON? Have you considered other formats like binary XML or things like that? Because at least in our testing, when we're moving lots of data, which is probably a little more salient to this audience, AtomPub is prohibitively chatty.
I know it's XML, right? So it's kind of with all the overhead that XML has, and we're actually looking into that right now, because we got the requirements from a lot actually to ask, is there like another way of getting data down faster? And we're looking at that.
And I guess a second follow-up question to that, and this may or may not apply based on how you handle your content providers. Is there any, or has there been any interest in providing sort of not the entire marketplace experience, but just sort of the data service layer, essentially the data proxy layer, as something maybe open source or available to the scientific community as a means of exposing their data for scenarios that may not necessarily fit within Dallas itself as sort of a commercial entity?
Yeah, we're also looking into that, because we got that too as feedback, that there's also people are really interested to like get the whole kind of like infrastructure part and use that with it.
Essentially just a data proxy, right?
Yeah, and there's also something, I don't know if you are aware, there's also a website from SQL Azure. It's called SQLAzureLabs.com. And what they show there is to expose a SQL Azure database as a OData service feed. So they call it, I mean, it was called at one of the conference meetings like checkbox-driven development, which means like you specify the database, you click the checkbox to say like expose it as OData feed, and then it shows up.
Right.
So, which is part of the infrastructure.
Yes, SQL Azure as it stands today is limitedly small.
Yeah.
For a lot of data sets.
I know. We are also driving their requirements. I mean, we have like lots of current providers who say like, you know, the data base size is pretty small, and we need like bigger SKU, you know, where we can upload more data. And we are, I know that they are working on that because they get that feedback.
Yes, suppose I'd like to share some data with just couple of university.
Mm-hmm.
Is it Dallas is the right place to go?
You only want to show it with, you only want to share it with a couple of universities, or you want to open it up to the...
just small set of the people.
That's something we call a private marketplace, which means like you have partners that you want to share data with. And it is not coming for V1, but we are looking into it, and it's really way top in our requirements, because it's also a lot of providers who say like, we have this great data set and we have these partners, but we don't, right now what we do is like we have this manual process of sharing the data, right? But we would like to automate that more into a web kind of thing, but we don't want to share with everybody. So we are working into that, which is, you know, you could see it as an invite-only marketplace or something like that.
So right now, basically, if I uploaded even just 1 kilobyte, it costs. If I put any data for any sharing, basically there is a cost associated, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
There's an ADO.NET data services answer to that right now, but has nothing to do with you.
The OData, right?
Yeah, if he wants to provide data to his colleagues, and it's not really huge, then
he can do that, yeah, right.
It doesn't have to be a Dallas component.
Yeah, right now what you can do is...
Can you repeat the question?
Huh?
Can you repeat the question?
Oh yeah, of course. What was mentioned is that there's an ADO.NET services, data services component that allows you to do that, which is the OData protocol right now. And the thing is that you can expose the data right now, and you have to build on the .NET, ADO.NET data services platform, and they have also samples on how to expose it. And it's what you do basically is you say like, I have this database, and in Visual Studio you create a EDMX, which is a data abstraction layer, and you say like, I want to expose that as a service. And then they provide the whole infrastructure. What you need to do then is you need to host it on some web server on your own, but you can do that right now. It's available.
Christian Goyer-Pollmann from Microsoft. As far as I understand, Dallas basically is our offering to host data for our partners. From what I understand from the academic community, there is often the obligation to host data sets or research results that kind of go along with a scientific publication so that other people can repeat my experiments. So what I would like to understand is Dallas an offering that is compelling for academic researchers to, you know, kind of have this data hosting obligation, or to fulfill this data hosting obligation, that these researchers basically can dump their data on Microsoft, we host it for them, and how expensive is this? I mean, if I want to commercialize my data and really sell it for big amounts of money, clearly I see that Dallas is providing value to me. If people want to repeat my experiments, probably they're not willing to pay big amounts of money for that. So what's your view on this?
So it depends a little bit on how many people you want to reach also. Because like if you say, you could, like as mentioned, you could host the data on your own, right? And then the problem is like, how do you reach all the audiences? So if you have a channel of doing it, you could do it on your own. The benefit that you get with Dallas is the broad reach. So if you want to do that, then you have to host it to that. Also to that, as I showed in the demo, is also you can host it on a SQL Server instance. So what you could do instead of hosting it in SQL Azure, You could say like I have it in my SQL server. I have this box sitting there, but I open it up to the internet. So you have to make sure it doesn't go in. It is isolated, and then it could go to Dallas. And if it's a free offering, we actually do the cost coverage for you. So there's no.
Well, if I'm hosting it myself, then I have all the work and the obligations. So the question is like, is Dallas a mechanism, kind of a fire and forget? Like I give it to Microsoft and don't need to think about it. That's kind of the.
Right now, we don't have a plan of like hosting data for everybody for free. So you would need to actually host it on your own somehow, and you need to figure that. Like you can also, like from the Dallas point of view, we want the data, so you can host it wherever you want. It is better if you host it in Azure because then you're in the same data center and you get all this. You don't have the overhead of like we need to reach out to you and we need to get the data in our data center and then give it to the user, right? Because it's in the same data center, it's a fast transfer, right? But other than that, we only care about the data. We don't care where it's hosted. So you can host it wherever. So if you find a cheaper offering, and then you can use that. And if you want to make money off of it, we will add this percentage. But if you expose it as a free data set, then we do the cost coverage for you. Hope.
Thank you. Frankly, what happens if I'm a consumer and the data turns out to be crap?
Okay, that's a good question. Which happens quite often, right? The thing is, what we built into our marketplace is the ability for users to rate the content and also to provide comments and feedback to the content providers and to the community itself. So we hope that this is going to be a community-driven approach where the community is able to verify the data.
So that's for the future. What about the past?
What do you mean the past?
I paid a lot to get access, and once I analyzed it, I realized that the data was crap. Do I sue you or do I sue the data provider?
So there's a few ways of avoiding that in the first place because you don't want to sue.
I've explored it, and my exploration looked like it was okay.
Mm-hmm.
It's only when I did mass analysis that it turned out to be crap.
Then it is similar to what you have right now with like iTunes or something like that, where you have to sue the content provider in that case then. Or you have to work with the content provider to get this the issue fixed. Microsoft is the broker of the data. We don't own the data, we only broker the data. So we can't actually also force the content provider to change their data because we only broker the data for them. Yes?
Alex Yasupti, Delft, the Netherlands. I'd like to ask, I'm not sure, I may have missed it in your presentation, I'm not sure how you're planning to transfer the information to the user. So my question is, if you have many users, do you plan to also use peer-to-peer file sharing?
What we're going to use is, what we want to do is actually we want to be in all the data centers that Azure is in, and we want to make sure our infrastructure can handle the load. So we don't plan to use peer-to-peer right now, and we also want to use CDN network, make sure it's on the edges so people get access to it really fast.
Okay, but this will raise the cost of communicating the data and hosting.
Yes, we are aware of that. Yeah, thanks for that.
Any other questions? Okay, let's give Christian a round of applause. Thank you so much.